Well, hello again, xenographers everywhere. Today we're looking at lenses that you can buy for next to nothing, for peanuts. These lenses are almost free. They're some of the cheapest lenses in the world. And for the quality of image that these lenses can give, that is a pretty cool thing. These lenses were all made by the Russian camera industry. They are all Industars and they are all fantastic performers. I kid you not, these are really, really nice lenses. We have the Industar 61. This is an f2.8 to f16 50mm lens. Well, actually 52mm, but we're not going to worry about that. It's a Nifty 50. In the centre here we have the Industar 26. This has apertures from f2.8 to f22. Lastly, but by no means least, we have the cheapest of them all. This lens can be found for, I don't know, £5 if you're lucky. This is the Industar 50. These three are Leica L39 mount. They are rangefinder lenses. They're all a Tessar design. So a little bit of history. This is the 1938 Fed 10, and this is an f3.5 to f18 lens. This is one of the first lenses of the Soviet camera industry. They began by manufacturing exact copies of the Leica 2, and this was the lens that they were fitted with. This is a Tessar design. It's uncoated. I think that this lens is a copy of the Leica Elmar. If the Russians at that time were copying the Leica camera, then it seems to me fairly likely that they were also copying the Leica lens. This has the same dimensions as the Tessar. It's uncoated. It's a very small, collapsible lens. The Elmar itself was a Tessar design. So we can make a good case for saying that all three of these lenses were in fact derived from the Elmar design. Whether that's true or whether it isn't, they are all Tessar formula lenses, the same as the Elmar was. So they are very close to the original Leica designs. And it shows. These are lovely, lovely lenses. Let's tell you a little bit about each one. So this is the Industar 61. This was original equipment for the Fed 4 camera and also the Fed 5. And in fact the Fed 3s also came with this lens. There were millions and millions and millions of them produced. It has 4 elements in 3 groups. Apertures from f2.8 to f16. The aperture has click stops on this lens, so that may make it less good for video. It focuses from approximately 3 feet to infinity. That's the nature of a rangefinder lens. Rangefinder lenses rarely focus closer than 3 feet because it causes all sorts of difficulties with parallax. It's all metal construction. The body is aluminium. The helix, the focusing helix, is also aluminium. They're very often a little bit sticky. The grease has gone old. This one is nice and free, as you'll see. Moves very nicely. And in fact, a very nice, easy way to fix these is to unscrew the screws around the perimeter here of the focus ring and put literally 2 or 3 drops of motor oil onto the threads. That will free up the grease. It will reconstitute the grease back into fluid form. Don't put any more than that in. Be very, very careful while you're doing it because it's very easy to get oil on the aperture blades if you put too much in, and also oil can find its way out of the lens, and if you're using it on a digital camera, you definitely don't want oil on your sensor, or indeed in a film camera on the curtains. That could cause some damage. This is the lens I used when I was learning photography many years ago with a Fed 4. It served me very, very well. I got some very, very nice images from it. And let's have a look now at some images that this lens is capable of making. We've got some stills to look at, and there's also a little video as well. Here's the predecessor to the Industar 61. You can see it looks very, very similar, except it doesn't have the black painted finish on the this ring here around the depth of field scale, or on the focus ring. It's a very similar lens. It is said to be not quite as good as the 61, which came later. I'm not entirely sure that's true. I've used this lens, I've tested it thoroughly, I've taken stills and video with it, and it's a very nice performer. It does suffer when pointing into a light source, for example the sun or an artificial light, and you can end up with some washed out low contrast images, so it's best used with a hood if you are working with a light source anywhere in the field of view, although you can get some very nice lens flare from it, and indeed also the 61. The aperture on this lens, the aperture ring, goes from f16 to f22. It's stepless on this version. Very useful for video. Again, if the focus ring is a little tight, it just means that the old grease has dried up. The same method will cure this lens as I outlined on the 61, just 2 or 3 drops of motor oil on the threads of the helix after loosening the screws around the focus ring. That just moves forward. But a really nice lens, very, very cheap, very, very good value, absolutely outstanding value. It must be one of the best value lenses in the world. Both the 61 and the 26 can be had for peanuts, and I really do mean peanuts. There are plenty of these on eBay. They're often put on at a buy it now of £15 and don't sell. They are spectacularly cheap. Bang for buck. They are possibly the best value lenses in the world, certainly among the best. Here is the lens that's often considered the poor relation of the Industar range. It's the Industar 50. Again, it's a 50mm lens. Apertures from f3.5 to f16, and the aperture ring is here, right on the front, possibly in a rather more awkward place than on the 61 and the 26. This one's a little stiff, could do with some lubrication. The focus ring on this lens is right at the front here, so we just turn this ring and there we go, focusing. Again, it's a rangefinder lens and it will focus down to about 3 feet to infinity. Of course, if you're using any of these lenses on micro four thirds, the close focusing range is effectively halved, so you can get down to the equivalent of about 1.5 feet. The poor old Industar 50 is an ugly duckling. Man, is this lens ugly. What can have been going through the designers' minds? It really doesn't look good. It looks awkwardly shaped. The proportion and the lines don't seem right to me. However, don't let that put you off, because this lens will give you some really nice images. It renders colours beautifully, it's very sharp, it has nice bokeh. It's just a really, really nice lens. f3.5, okay, perhaps that's a bit limiting, but hey, don't let that put you off. Most of the kit lenses you get with a brand new digital camera are f3.5. So is it really anything to worry about? I would say no. And it will make you some absolutely fantastic images for next to no cost. And in terms of image quality, maybe it's the best of the three. I don't know, but I do like what it can do. Let's have a look now at some images made with this lens, both stills and video. So here they are again, the three amigos. The Industar 26, the Industar 50, and the Industar 61. These lenses will produce some of the nicest images you could hope for. These lenses are high quality, they are coated, used with a hood they won't flare, they render colours beautifully, and they're small. They look really good on, for example, the Sony A7. They do seem to suit this camera, and as they're rangefinder lenses, you can see they only need a very small adapter. So it makes for a very small package, it suits the proportions of the camera nicely, and I think it really works well on the A7. They also work pretty well on micro four thirds. Again, the adapter is small, they suit the proportions of the camera, and on micro four thirds the minimum focus distance is about 1.5 feet, so you really can't go wrong with these lenses. Pick one up, pick a few up, try them, use them, enjoy them. I know I do. That's it for today, everybody. See you next time for a spot more Zenography. Subscribe and like if you enjoyed, please. See you next time.